So hey guys, today's video is going to be my favorite video to film every month. I cannot believe we're already almost entering March, but I am going to be filming my February reading wrap up, and I'm going to talk about all the books that I was able to read and finish in the month of February of 2025. Again, I cannot believe we're already starting March. It's kind of insane how fast it's going. But you know, this February was a rough month for me, okay? I had a lot of stuff happen. I had a nervous breakdown, but we're doing okay now because I'm getting ready to see some of my girlfriends from work, and I'm really excited to see them tonight. We're going to go get some ramen, we're going to go get some drinks, and I'm super excited. And then tomorrow night, I'm also going out with my best friend and his girlfriend. We hang out, like, all the time. I love her so much. We're becoming, like, very fast friends. So, yeah, and I just love hanging out with them, too. And it's not, like, a third wheel kind of thing, because I've been with my boyfriend, like, forever. He just doesn't really go out half as much as I do. So, anyway, I was able to finish, well, I'm currently reading my 20th book this month. So I am going to be finishing 20 books this month. At the moment that I'm filming this, well, actually, no. I will be finishing 21 books. And that's including 2 novellas and 2 audiobooks. So without the 2 novellas and the 2 audiobooks, it still would have been 18 books, I think. No, 17. Which 16 to 17 books is what I usually average per month. So the fact that I started with not really being in the mood to read in the beginning of the month, and then I flew through freaking 21 books is literally insane. But I'm in the middle of finishing an audiobook right now, and I'll finish it by tomorrow night because I only have 2 hours and 45 minutes left in it because it's a really short thriller book. I'm currently listening to Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney, which is my book of the month that I got in January. So I wanted to finish that before the month was over. And again, I knew it would take me like no time to finish it. And I forgot that I wanted to listen to it while I was getting ready. But now I'm going to have to listen to it back and forth in the car and then getting ready tomorrow. Because I'm like, wait, I was going to use that time to listen to it now, but it's fine. It's not a big deal. Then I'll only have 2 hours to listen to tomorrow, and I should be able to bang that out tomorrow. And then the one that I'm currently reading on my Kindle is First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. I'm almost halfway through. I just hit like 42% today, so I should definitely finish that book by tomorrow. So that will be the other 2 books that I talk about at the end of this video. So without further ado, let's jump into the books I was able to read this month. And I had a great reading month this month. I didn't really rate any books under 3.5 stars. So I just had a really great quality reading month, and I'm so excited to talk about the books that I read. I think I found less 5 stars this month, though, than I did in January, but honestly, I read better books this month than I did in January. I mean, I read my favorite book that I ever read in my life, which was Blood Over Bright Haven in January, but I did also read, like, some pretty subpar books, which was The Crash by Frida McFadden and Four Ruined Realms. Those are by May Corlin. Those are the 2 worst books that I read this year. This month, honestly, I could not say I read a bad book this month. So that's really good. I mean, I read some okay books, but honestly, they weren't so bad that I wouldn't be like, oh, I don't recommend this. I still gave them both like 3 stars or 3.5 stars. So actually, my lowest rated book was just 3 stars. So anyway, let's get into it. But honestly, that's higher than some of the other books that I read in January. So the first book I'm going to be talking about that I read in February. This book actually took me like almost a week to finish because I did start it, I believe, in like the 26th or 27th of January. When does it say I started it? Yeah, the 27th, but I finished it the 3rd of February, and it was the first book that I finished in February, and I was like, oh my god, it's February 3rd already. February is such a short month. I'm going to have like no time to read anything, and then meanwhile, I finished over 20 books this month, so the first book that I'm going to talk about is the first book that I read from Fredrik Backman, and that is Beartown. Now, I know everyone will not shut up about this series, will not shut up about Fredrik Backman, But I think that this is still honestly my favorite book that I read this month, and it was the very first book that I read in February. And I knew from the very first page of this book, I knew this book was going to be amazing, and I already knew this book was going to be a 5-star. So it was like probably like the easiest 5 stars I've given to a book so far, especially this month, because the way that Fredrik Backman writes is so unique, and the way that he approached this sensitive crime that was committed in this town was so beautifully written, because it's such a sensitive, like, female topic to talk about. And just I have so many quotes from this book, because literally I probably quoted at least one quote every single page of this book, because that's how good his writing is. Like, so basically it's about the town of Beartown, and this town really only cares about hockey, and this town is just, they're obsessed with hockey, and honestly, there's like nothing else going for this town. And a crime is committed later on in the book and completely divides the town on whose side somebody is on. And that's basically all you need to know, because if I say anything else, it's going to kind of spoil it. I actually still have not watched the show, which I don't know why I haven't, because I kind of forgot that I wanted to. No offense. Also, because they took it off of HBO Max, so I'm like, where the hell can I watch it? So, probably just going to have to watch it on some third-party website, but I absolutely loved it. And I know I want to continue the series, because then I will have read 3 of Fredrik Backman's books, and Fredrik Backman was definitely a high priority author on my list for 2025, and I'm so glad that I at least read Beartown. But I knew this was also a series that I was going to have to spread out, because this subject matter hits really hard, and it's very sensitive and can be very triggering for some people. So check your twigga. Why do I say twigga warnings? Trigger warnings before you go into this book, please. Especially if you've experienced this yourself. Just, maybe like look into what the crime involves, because there are very sensitive topics that are talked about in this book, but I absolutely loved the way that he approached it. He did it in such a sensitive way, and his writing is absolutely beautiful. Like, I really can't say anything else. And basically you get multiple POVs in this book, but the way that he does it is that there's like a pause in between like each character's perspective, like in the same chapter. And sometimes he won't always say whose name it is, but it'll flow so well, because it's like, oh, I forgot that I was so intrigued on what happened with that character in the last 2 pages ago. And then he'll go back to it like right away and then say what else is happening with that character. And it's just so good. The writing flows beautifully. I can't rave about it enough. I absolutely loved it. Okay. So then the next book that I finished was the audiobook that I started in January, at the end of January as well. And at first I was just going to read this on Kindle, but then I heard from one of the booktubers that I watch. I can never remember her name, but I do watch her a lot. And I honestly kind of regretted not getting this in my book of the month, but then she highly recommended the audiobook, so I got the audiobook on my Everand account, and I'm so happy that I listened to the audiobook, because it was amazing, so I highly recommend it. And I'm talking about The Favorites by Lane Fargo. Literally everybody and their mother was reading this book in February, so I was like, I need to read this. I need to see what all the hype is about. And I absolutely loved it. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. And the reason why I gave it a 4.5, I thought it was going to be a 5-star. But I felt like the last, like, maybe like 10% of it, I didn't love it. But overall, I still think it's a really, really well done book. Basically based on a figure skating rivalry, and they're kind of comparing this to like Nancy Kerrigan and I believe Oksana Bayul's feud with each other in real life. That's kind of like what this is based on. And the 2 main characters' names are Katarina, and Katarina Shaw is like the main character, and basically She will do anything to win, like, an Olympic gold medal. Okay, I literally cannot see a thing right now, so we're going to have to open the blind and turn up the light a little because I cannot see to blend my eyeshadow to save my life right now. Okay, that's better. And basically that's what it's about. And, it's about, like, you know, whatever these players will do to win a gold medal. And, like, I think the reason why people really loved this book is because of this series is because, like, it felt so real when I was listening to it. And, like, I actually thought that the reason why I didn't get this book in my book of the month is because I thought it was a nonfiction book. And I was like, no, it's a fiction book, Caitlin. But I honestly thought it was like a memoir or something of, like, real figure skaters. And it's like, no, it actually was a fiction book. So I loved it, devoured it, so good. Highly recommend the audiobook if you want to listen to it. But let's move on to the next book. But I do think that this book is totally worth the hype. And I do think it was just so good. And I do think it does give the vibes of Taylor Jenkins Reid, because that's what a lot of people were comparing this book to, was the writing style of Taylor Jenkins Reid. I still have only read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I really do want to read more of her books, but I just haven't gotten to them this year. I'm working on more of my Kristen Hanna books rather than my Taylor books. I'm not going to say her name every 5 seconds because it's just too long. But yeah, I absolutely loved it, and I highly recommend the audiobook. Okay, so like I said, I wasn't really feeling like reading in the beginning of the month, and this always happens in the beginning of the month for me because I always get so overwhelmed by, like, my TBR and choosing what I read next in the beginning of the month, because it's like, as soon as I start the next month, it always feels like I haven't read, like, a damn thing. And I'm like, Caitlin, that's ridiculous. You've already read, like, almost 40 books this year already, which is insane. So what I decided to do is I just decided to mood read 2 books to get myself back in the swing of reading physical books because I had only finished Beartown. But honestly, Beartown got me to read again because, again, that book was probably my favorite book that I read this month. So I finally read my first physical book that I read in February, and I read this in my 24-hour readathon. So the next 3 books that I talk about, I did read in my 24-hour readathon vlog, if you haven't checked that out yet. And the one that I'm talking about is Heavenly Bodies by Imani Iriu. Again, everyone was reading this book in February, and I wanted to see what all the hype was about. So I picked this up with my friend, like, at the beginning of February, and I knew I wanted to read this very, very soon as I picked it up. I also did a pretty decent job of reading the books that I had just picked up. Like, I just picked this book up, like, maybe 3 weeks ago, and also look at this. It's freaking stunning. I freaking loved this book so much. I might actually round this up to a 5-star because originally I gave it a 4.75. But I felt like it was just close enough to be a 5-star because I thought about this book for days after I read it because it made me cry. It made me laugh. It was just so fast-paced. I felt like the chapters were, like, styled like almost like thriller chapters because they were so short and so good. Like, this book was just so great. So basically it's about it's a celestial fantasy about 2 star-crossed lovers. And I don't know why I can't remember. Alara and what is the man's name? It's basically like a very similar plot to Fear the Flames, if you had read that book, where it's basically like enemies have to work together to become allies, and then obviously they become lovers at one point. So what is his name? Prince Lorenzo. So basically he has to work with her in order to save, like, their kingdom. And I'm actually struggling to remember what the fuck happened in this book, but I just know that I fucking loved it, okay? It's just like sometimes I struggle with what actually happened in the moment of the books that I read earlier in the month. But I just have to tell you guys that this book was fantastic. it was just such a perfect mix of magic and romance. I absolutely loved the characters' banter in it. And I cried a couple of times reading this book as well. So it says, in a world where no entities exist but the stars, cruel and merciless gods that watch over the world, Alara has been cursed by fate. Let me just actually describe what this book is about. A prophecy that promises she will fall for a star and it will kill them both. Oh, now I remember. But when one descends to wreak havoc on Alara's kingdom, she is forced to flee in the arms of her enemy in the neighboring country. As she learns more about her own magic and the depth of the star's deceit, she also finds herself learning more about the country she is forced to take refuge in, and the enemy prince forced to train her into a weapon. Something dark brews within her, a power made of night and shadows that begs to be broken free. Like, how does that not sound amazing? And I absolutely loved it. I cried, I laughed, and this book was so fast-paced. I think I devoured it in like a day and a half. I literally could not put it down. I could not wait to see what happened at the end. And it was just great. It was a great time. And there was like a lot of debate about like what happens with the celestials and the gods of the stars. And, basically people start questioning how powerful the star gods actually are. That's what I'll leave you with, because that's what I actually remember now. But I can't give anything else away or it's going to spoil it. Okay, so the next book that I read was one that I was really, really excited for. And again, I read this in my 24-hour readathon. And this is my first book by this author as well. So this was actually my second January 2025 release that I finished in February, because like I told you guys, I finished 5 January releases in January, and then in February I think I'm going to be finishing 3, because I read the favorites and then I read this one, and then I'm also going to be finishing Beautiful Ugly. So we will be reading a total of 8 January releases in January and February. But at least I listened to 2 of them via audiobook. So the next book that I read was Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. And this is my very first Sarah Adams book. I've been very curious about reading her books, but I've heard that this one was her best one so far. And I loved this book. This book was so much fun. It was so funny. I really, really loved the style that Sarah Adams writes. And also, I really enjoyed that this was closed door, because sometimes sometimes romances don't really need the smut to be interesting. And for people to assume that all romance books are just about smut are seriously so fucking wrong. It's not even funny. But I gave this book a 4.25 stars because I really ate up the chemistry between, what is her name? Emily and Jack. And basically they are rivals to, like, friends to lovers. But honestly, their rivalry has always been kind of rooted in more of like a childish, like, innocent kind of way. Like, they've never actually, like, flat out hated each other. But what I really liked about the way that Sarah Adams wrote their rivalry is that you always got the undercurrent of them being attracted to each other from the very first, like, 20% of the book. Like, that attraction was already established very early into the book. So it wasn't really, like, all that surprising, because you obviously knew they were going to get together. But the way that they, like, they would also, like, openly flirt with each other and also say, like, you know, you really like me, you know, like, that kind of childish kind of banter. Because they would always make those kind of jokes to each other, like, oh, you do look hot in that shirt. And, like, it was always, like, a underlying kind of attraction for each other. So that's why I loved it so much. And I really connected with Emily's character. Because if you guys didn't know, I am the oldest daughter out of my siblings. So I have a younger sister and I have an older brother. But honestly, older daughters always feel like a lot of the responsibility falls on them. And I do feel like that with my family, where, like, my feelings are always put aside because I'm always worrying about everybody else in my family. And then my mom is always telling me, like, why don't you talk to me? And it's like, because there's no point sometimes. Like, I'm not trying to say that I don't love my mom, but sometimes it's true. So she basically, like, said something similar to that in this book that resonated with me so much. Because she was the oldest daughter, but she wasn't the oldest sibling, but she always acted like she had to be strong for her other siblings because, of course, the oldest sibling was a son. So, and I've said this before, but my brother, like, doesn't know how to do fucking anything, okay? I'm not even being, like, exaggerated. He doesn't know how to do anything. So, like, me and my mom have to constantly, like, you know, take care of everything all the time. And it's like, I never get any, I don't need, like, credit, but, like, I could, like, get, you know, maybe, like, a thank you. Or, like, not just expecting that I'm just going to take care of everything with my mom because she can't rely, like, on my brother or my dad to do something that she needs to get done when she's not here. It's like she always asks me because she knows I'm gonna be able to take care of it. So it's like stuff like that. So anyway, I really enjoyed this book and it was so funny. And also, I have not read the other two When in Rome books, but now I really want to. But it did say that you could literally read this totally out of order and it doesn't matter because they're all, like, interconnected standalones. It's just that maybe, like, one or two of those characters will make cameos, or it will be based on, like, one of the characters' siblings from, like, the previous book, which I think Emily or Jack is one of the siblings in one of the other When in Rome books. But I really, really want to read those other two books now. I just don't know when the hell I'm going to get to them. I just wanted to read this one first because it was a 2025 release. And I felt like a lot of people were reading it in January. So that's why I wanted to read it. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. It was such a fun time. It was so funny. And it was just such a great time and a great read. So let me just talk about these two books really quick before I get my sponge, because after that, I'm going to talk about the series that I finished in February. And I'm so happy that I was able to actually finish a series in February because I hadn't been able to finish or even read a series in January, not February, besides Fourth Wing, which is fine because I wanted to do a reread of Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. I still haven't listened to any other books that I wanted to reread, but I'm definitely planning on listening to Powerless before Fearless comes out. So that's going to be my reread for March, or possibly just like the first week of April or like the last week of March. But I'm definitely going to reread that before Fearless comes out. So anyway, the next book that I read, I just wanted like a short, quick read, just to finish a book in like a night, basically. And this was like in between my 24-hour readathon. I thought I was going to have time to read this book in my 24-hour readathon because it was just a short 70-page novella, but it turned out I wasn't going to have time. So I just read this outside of the 24-hour readathon, and I knew I really wanted to read this, and that is Abby Jimenez's The Fall Risk. And of course, you guys know I have to read every single book that Abby Jimenez comes out with. But I actually forgot to read Worst Wingman Ever for Valentine's Day because she seems to come out with a Amazon short story like every Valentine's Day. And that one came out last Valentine's Day, and for some reason I never got to it. But I was able to read this one at least. And this was really, really good. I gave it a 4 stars. And I forgot to mention it in my TBR video that it is coming out March 1st of 2025. But since basically if you don't have an Amazon account, then you can get it. But if you have an Amazon account, you could read this by like February 1st. So like, I think everybody that wanted to read this already did read it. So I didn't feel the need to announce it in the video, but also I kind of forgot. So anyway, this book is about a girl named Charlotte and Seth. And Charlotte is basically moving into this new apartment that she needed to move house because she's actually being stalked by like this crazy guy. And Seth is like her basically next door neighbor in the apartment complex, and she has to live on like the third floor because obviously she can't live on the first floor because that would be like easy access for the stalker to like get into her apartment. And basically Seth is like her repairman. And they slowly like develop a friendship and a relationship. And honestly, everybody's saying that this book should have been longer because honestly, it's set up to be such a good read. But honestly, it was so cute the way that it wrapped up. And it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I love Abby Jimenez's writing, and I'm so excited for Say Remember Me, of course. So I really, really liked it. Okay, and then the last book that I didn't finish in my 24-hour readathon, but I did get pretty much almost... Actually, I got like 70% of the way through into this book in my 24-hour readathon. I had exactly like 100 pages left when the timer went off. That is She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica. Now, I picked up this book because I've been wanting to read, like I said, I've been wanting to try other thriller authors in 2025 besides Frida McFadden, and I've been wanting to read other thriller authors that are not Frida McFadden and other female authors. So, I think I read 3 thrillers in January, and then I only am able to get to Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney, and that's it. Those are the only 2 thrillers that I read this month, but also I wasn't really in the mood for thrillers this month. But I'm going to be reading 2 in March as well. So basically, this book is about, and the only reason why I picked this book up, but also Francesca Reeds did recommend this book, and she said that she loved it. She's like, she couldn't guess the twist and stuff. And the thing is that I liked this book enough to continue on. I definitely liked it more than The Crash, but I wouldn't say it's like my favorite thriller ever because it was like kind of mid. So I gave it a 3 stars. Like, it was nothing like crazy. It's not like I regretted reading it. It's not like I loved it. It was just okay. So basically, let me just read it really quick. It says, an ICU nurse accidentally uncovers a patient's frightening past in this chilling thriller. Megan Michaels is trying to find balance between being a single mom to a teenage daughter and working as a full-time nurse. While on duty at the hospital one day, a patient named Caitlin, and the only reason why I picked it up is because she spells her name the exact way I spell my name, which is Caitlin, and it says, arrived in a coma with a traumatic brain injury, having jumped from a bridge and plunging over 20 feet to the train tracks below. But when a witness comes forward with shocking details about the fall... What is on my lashes? It calls everything to know into question. Was Caitlin pushed, and if so, by whom and why? Megan has always tried to stay emotionally detached from her patients, but this time she's mistakenly let herself get too close until she's deeply entangled in Caitlin's and her family's lives. Only when it's too late does she realize that she and her daughter could be the next victims. So I did like the twist because honestly, and now I understand the twist that she was saying is that I didn't really predict it. So that was a good twist, honestly. It did get me. But I wasn't really like creeped out by this book in any way. And there were some parts that were like too repetitive. And like the beginning, like the first half was kind of slow. Then I was like, okay, when are things going to pick up? And like also some of the things that the female character did were kind of dumb. And like it really pisses me off when like she's like, oh, these attacks are happening, but let me go into my basement without a phone or without a flashlight in the dark. And then the door locks, but I'm in the dark. So that's what pissed me off. And she was like, oh, I should have my keys out because there's attacks happening, but I don't have my keys on me to get into my apartment. I'm just going to go the long way by myself. Like, like after somebody like offered to walk her home, she's like, no, I'm good. So like, that's what annoyed me, but it was good. I liked it. So hold on. We're just going to grab my sponge and then we're going to talk about the series that I read. Okay, guys. So now we're going to talk about the series that I finally read in February. And I told you guys if I hadn't read this series by February, I could say you could yell at me, but I read the entire Shadow Me series. I read the whole thing by Tara Mafi, and I'm talking about the main 6 books. I read 2 of the novellas. I did not read all of the novellas. So, and I wasn't going to grab them off my shelf again and like talk about every single book individually. We'll be here for forever. But if you guys want to see my full thoughts on the entire Shatter Me series, you can just check out my 2 reading vlogs that I posted right before this video of reading the entire Shatter Me series, parts 1 and 2. So I'm just going to quickly recap my thoughts on the series, but I'm going to tell you guys my ratings of each book first. So the first book I rated 4.25 stars, and then I'm just going to say both of the novellas. I read Destroy Me and Fracture Me, and I rated both of those 4 stars, but I did read Destroy Me right after Shatter Me, and then I read Unravel Me, which is the second book, and I rated that a 4.25 as well, and then I read Fracture Me, which I rated 4 stars, and then I read Ignite Me, and I gave it a 4.75. That one was definitely my favorite book in the series so far. And then I took a break, and I did read my first arc read, but I'm going to talk about Shatter Me together first, and then I will talk about my very first arc that I ever read, which I cannot believe. Like, my mind is blown that I received this arc. And then we'll talk about arc reads later in the video. And then I read Restore Me, and I gave that a 5 stars. That was definitely my favorite book in the whole series. And then I read, Defy Me, which I also gave a 4.25 stars. And then, of course, Imagine Me, which is the last book in the series, I gave a 4 stars. So I thought that the series started out very strong. So basically the books are about a girl named, Juliet, and she basically has, a power where she cannot be touched, or basically she will bring on great harm to whoever tries to touch her. And she was placed in like a mental asylum / prison for like 2 years of her life. Like, she hadn't even talked to anybody for like a long time. I'll give you like a brief overview of like the entire series and my thoughts on the series. So eventually this guy named Adam is paired with her to be her cellmate, and eventually they do escape. And they escape to like this other sector, like in the well, actually, she is taken to Warner, which is like the other main character. And she basically is being held there as well, because Warner is actually the son of this terrible, terrible, terrible man named Anderson. I can't believe I'm remembering all the names right now. And he basically wants to destroy anyone that has powers. Like, there's, it's basically like similar to like Powerless or like Red Queen, where there's people that have powers and people that don't have powers. And they think that people with powers, of course, are evil and want to destroy them. But like, it's the opposite in Powerless, where like the people that have powers want to destroy the people that don't have powers. So basically, it goes from there. And then in the second book, Unravel Me, this like big love triangle develops between Adam and Warner. And honestly, I got like a little bit annoyed about the love triangle going on for so long in that book, because I felt like we spent a little bit too long on it. I was like, I kind of want to see like how, they defeat like the dystopian empire that tries to take over basically the world. And I felt like there's kind of a formula to these books where like, it starts off basically as soon as the last book left off, which I really love. Like, it will basically have a cliffhanger at the end, and then it'll pick up right off where it ended. So that's what makes these books so freaking bingeable. And then we'll like spend some time, or a lot of time, figuring out who Juliet's gonna choose. But I understand why she took a while, but like at the same time, it got me annoyed that she kept on apologizing for who she was, because honestly, she really wasn't doing anything wrong until like probably the end of the third book and the fourth book. there was some questionable things that she did in those books, but also, like, she was trying to understand. Basically, it was her inner battle of understanding the difference between good and evil, because honestly, she was raised in a pure evil environment because her parents believed that she was, sick and that she should be locked in an insane asylum because, no one could ever touch her, so no one could ever love her. So that's why it was hard for her to see who she wanted to choose to be with. So that was a lot of the second book. And then the third book, there was like a big character arc with Juliet, and also Adam was kind of an asshole in that book. But basically everybody knew that she was going to end up being with Warner, but Warner was probably my favorite character. And I know everybody says Kenji's their favorite, but honestly, I think that Warner had the biggest character arc and growth, and I also really liked Juliet as well. But Warner, I loved his character so much, and I loved to see, like, how his inner battle between good and evil, because he started off to be pure evil pretty much because of his disgusting father. That's what a lot of the third book was about, and then this huge thing happens at the end of the third book. And then the fourth book, which is the only one that I gave a 5 stars to, was my favorite book in the entire series, where basically everything gets turned upside down that you learned in the first 3 books. That you're, like, honestly, this is where I say that people should not just drop the series after Ignite Me, because everybody says, yeah, the first 3 books are worth it, because originally it was only supposed to be a trilogy, and then they turned it into a 6-book series because obviously it was so damn popular. But honestly, I think Restore Me was the biggest character arc, and also it's pretty much Juliet and Warner's book. So that's why I loved it, and that's why I encourage people to stick with it. I do agree that the last 2 books are a little bit messy. Honestly, it probably could have ended with Defy Me, because I still actually really enjoyed Defy Me as well. But Defy Me was a little bit messily done. But we learn so much in Restore Me and so much in Defy Me that I do think you should stick with the series. But then I do understand people's disappointment with Imagine Me, because I felt like Imagine Me was such a repeat on what happened in Defy Me. And, like, the same plot was basically happening at the end of both of those books. And honestly, I was really looking forward to, like, a big battle in Imagine Me. And it was a little bit underwhelming that I was like, we're really doing the same storyline again. But, like, still overall, the series was so freaking entertaining that I still loved it. And I'm so glad that I finally got to them. And also Destroy Me and Fracture Me were really good novellas. I was intending on reading the rest of them, but honestly, like, Restore Me left off on such a cliffhanger that I immediately wanted to jump into Defy Me. And I finished Defy Me in like a day. I finished it so fast because it was only a 350-page book, but also I was listening to a lot of the audiobooks throughout the whole series because they're all available on YouTube for free. So I was just able to listen to a lot of it as well when, like, I wasn't able to read, like when I had to get ready for work or to go out and stuff. But honestly, what pissed me off the most was just that Kenji's voice was so awful. So awful. He sounded like, literally like Simone, not Simone, oh my god. Let's combine Simone and I was about to say Timba. Simone and, oh my god. Caitlin, are you an idiot? Simba and Timon. But he basically sounded like Simba from The Lion King, and there's nothing wrong with that, but, like, the voice actor that they chose for him sounded nothing like what Juliet made him sound like when she would talk like him in the audiobooks. Even Warner. And I really loved Warner's voice too. But I did feel like Warner's voice was a little bit too old for the character they were supposed to be playing. But at the same time, it kind of made sense because Out of everyone, Warner had to mature the fastest because of his piece of shit father. So it did make sense if he sounded older than he was. But Kenji's voice was so awful. Like, every time he did the female voices, it sounded so bad. He's like, what are we supposed to do? Like, that's basically what he sounded like. And I was like, I am cringing so hard. So I feel like, I don't know if that ruined a little bit of books 5 and 6 for me, because Restore Me is mostly from Warner and Juliet's perspectives, and then the 5th and 6th books are from... The 5th book is from Warner, Juliet, and Kenji's perspectives, and then the 6th book is just from Juliet and Kenji's perspective, and we're like, what the fuck, why didn't you put Warner back in? So that it would have been like, you know, she could have put him in like every 100 pages or something, at least like a little like 2 or 3 page chapter. So I don't really understand why she did that. So it was a little bit disappointing at the end, but overall, I really do not regret reading this series whatsoever. It was such a fun time, so bingeable, and just such a fun time to read that I'm so happy that I finally was able to get to them, and I really, really enjoyed Tahira Mafi's writing. And again, you find out more and more and more about the story if you continue on after Ignite Me. Do not just write off the series after you finish the 3rd book. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. So now let's talk about the ARC read that I was able to read in advance. And this book is actually coming out in like... It's coming out in like 5 days. So you guys will actually be able to read it very, very soon. I was just so floored when I received this ARC. I actually had received an ARC before this, and I was freaking out about it, but I haven't finished that one yet. But this one, I also knew I wanted it to make this my Valentine's Day read, even though the next book that I'm going to talk about was originally supposed to be... What am I looking for? It's literally right in front of me. Was originally supposed to be my Valentine's Day read. So the book that I had the privilege of reading before it came out was Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. You guys, this book is so personal to me, so I don't really want to dwell on it too long. But I absolutely love this book, and this was like the easiest 5 stars that I've ever given. But also, I had read Ready or Not back in, oh my god, I don't think this is the liner that I want to use. This is like so old at this point. Holy bejesus. Hold the phone. Where is it? Where is it? Oh my god. Oh, it's right here. If I could actually grab anything that I need. That is not it either. That is it. Holy bejesus. I read Ready or Not back in January, and I had read it right after Blood Over Bright Haven, like, absolutely destroyed me. And by the way, I have a reading vlog reading that, along with, like, 5 other books that I used the number wheel to choose which, or actually just I used the wheel of names to choose which books I read. And I think I lost, or I think I just deleted some of the footage that I took of, like, the first 2 books that I read. I think I just deleted them accidentally. So I wasn't able to post it. So I think what I was going to do was just, like, share a recap of, like, my thoughts on the first 2 books that I read in the video, and then just would have posted the rest of it, because I still haven't deleted that footage yet. But anyway, Ready or Not was, like, a complete mood read after I read Blood Over Bright Haven, because, like I told you guys, if I hadn't read a mood read after that book, I probably wouldn't have been able to touch a book, because that book, like, literally destroyed me. I loved it so much, but I needed to read something that was, like, the complete opposite, or something that I was just dying to read, so I decided to pick up Ready or Not, and that was a 5 stars, and now Promise Me Sunshine was a 5 stars, so Cara Bastone is quickly becoming one of my all-time favorite romance authors. The way that this woman writes is just fucking hysterical, but also she pulls at your heartstrings so much. I think I cried like 3 times in this book. That's how beautifully written it is, but the way that she flows her writing is so freaking beautiful. I can do my bronzer, like, I don't know why I'm just sitting here shooting the shit. But basically it's about a woman named Lenny, and she had, wait, hold on. One of my friends messaged me. No, it's just my boyfriend. It's about Lenny and Miles, and basically Lenny goes to work for this woman that she gets a babysitting job from to babysit her daughter, and Miles is the daughter's uncle, and that's how she ends up meeting Miles. And Miles has also lost somebody close to him in his life, but Lenny is mourning the loss of her best friend that she lost to cancer. And if you guys didn't know, I lost my best friend to cancer about 3 years ago. Actually, probably almost 4 years ago. I think it'll be 4 years in June. And it's basically like how Lenny gets over the loss of losing Lou and living her life again. And that's basically all you need to know, and it was absolutely beautifully written. I absolutely loved this book, and I would highly recommend it if you guys were thinking about reading Cara Bastone. I would say, what are you waiting for? Because I absolutely love her writing so much. Let me just grab my blush and highlight real quick, and then we'll talk about, I think we'll only have time to talk about one more book, and then I'm going to have to go. Okay, so after I had completed the Shatter Me series, because like I said, I did read the arc that I received in between Ignite Me and Restore Me, because I just wanted a little romance read for Valentine's Day, but then I was still listening to Restore Me, the audiobook, so I didn't pause the series. I just stopped reading it physically for like 2 days so I could read the arc that I received. So the last book that I'm going to talk about for now, and then I will talk about the rest when I get back, which I only have 3 more books to talk about. I did pretty good. I actually talked about a lot of books in this first half. So the next book that I read, so a goal of mine in 2025 is to read books that I've been sitting on my TBR for over 6 months, but also reading the books that I buy like more recently, almost right away, or try to read them as close to when I buy them as possible. And I did that quite a lot this month. But I also, since I got to the Shatter Me series, those were 6 books that were sitting on my TBR since July of last year. So I got those done. And then this book has been on my list probably as long as Love Hypothesis. And this is Allie Hazel. I cannot speak for some reason anymore. So I finally read Allie Hazelwood's Love Theoretically. This book has been on my TBR for a year. I think I put it on my want to read on Goodreads last February, and I did the same thing with Shatter Me, but I didn't pick up the entire Shatter Me series until like summertime of last year. So it wasn't on my physical TBR as long as this book was. So I think I picked up this book last February, you guys, and I finally read it this February. And the same thing with Shatter Me. When I was looking at my want to read list, and I was like, why did it work out that I ended up reading both of these books that I put on my TBR last February? I ended up reading them this February. So it's been literally a year. This book was so perfect to read after Shatter Me. And like I've told you guys, I've had such a up and down journey reading Allie Hazelwood's books, but I think that she's a very, very funny writer. And I've been wanting to see like whether or not I was going to like more of her books when I decided to pick them up and read them again, because the last book I had read from her, by the way, I gave this book a 4.5 stars because this ended up being my absolute favorite Allie Hazelwood book that I've read so far. I absolutely loved it. There was only like maybe 1 or 2 things that didn't make it a 5-star, and also I just didn't get the 5-star feeling reading it. But so far, this is by far my favorite Allie Hazelwood book that I've read so far. How many times can I say far? So as you guys know, I've had a very up and down journey with reading her books, but also I had not picked up one of her books since I read Love Hypothesis back in September. So it's been like almost 5 months since I had read an Allie Hazelwood book. So I was like, it's about time for me to read this book. And I freaking loved it. I thought it was so freaking funny. Oh my God. I was laughing out loud at so many things in this book. And basically it does have a very similar plot to Love Hypothesis, but I absolutely loved, I think I loved Elsie's character more than Jack, but I still really loved Jack as well. And why is everybody named Jack? In every romance book I read, he was named Jack in Beg, Borrow, or Steal, and he was named Jack in Love Theoretically. So why are they all named Jack? I don't even know a Jack personally in my life. None of my friends' names are Jack. So I understand how he's used so much as a name in books, but Josh is used quite a lot, and that's my boyfriend's name. So but anyway, it was just so cute. So basically Elsie, oh my god, why do I keep on calling her Eloise? Her name is Elsie. This highlighter, what happened? What is happening? I need to blend this a little bit better, because that blend was literally atrocious. Atrocious. Okay, we gotta go, y'all. I'm like speaking like an idiot. Basically, I loved this book. I thought it was so funny. So basically, Elsie is a theorist in science, and basically she comes up with like science theories, and Jack has always been like a big denier of whether or not science needs theorists, because they think that they're basically full of shit, because like science is all about, you know, proof. It's not about, you know, but I could go on about that for forever, because you need a theory in order for something in science to be proven. But anyway, so Elsie wants to move up from the current job that she has, you know, to make some more money and to like, you know, but it kind of had a similar plot line to Love Hypothesis, because like she has a best friend where they don't have that much money, and that was like the same plot line in this. And also like the male love interest is like a big, like really, you know, well-known scientist, and like is really wealthy and all of that. And that was basically the same thing with Adam and Olive in Love Hypothesis. But also there was such a cute cameo from both of them in this book. But it was just so cute. I really liked it. I felt like this was Love Hypothesis on steroids, because it was not cheesy at all like Love Hypothesis was, but I still really liked that book. And Love Hypothesis was my favorite book that I read from her until I read this book. And I just thought this book was so cute. And basically they develop a relationship, and it just made me have such a fun, giggly time, and I really enjoyed it. So I gotta go. So we'll talk about the rest of the books when I get back, or I'll talk about them tomorrow when I had finished First Time Caller. But yeah, now I only have like 5 more books to talk about when I get back. So that's it. Bye. So, hey guys, I wanted to talk about the last 3 books that I read so far in February. I am going to be finishing the other 2 books that I'm reading literally the last day of the month. I'm definitely finishing my audiobook, because I only have like an hour and 20 something minutes left, so I can listen to that while I'm getting ready today, and also back and forth driving to where I'm going later, because I'm going out with my best friend and his girlfriend. Let's talk about the last 3 physical books that I read in February. I actually decided to end the month with all new February releases, even though I had said before in my February TBR video that I wasn't going to read any February new releases, and then I was like, all 3 of these interested me. One of them wasn't even on my radar. I hadn't even talked about it in my TBR video. I hadn't said it was a new release for February, but then I saw quite a bit of buzz about this book, and this ended up being my favorite one out of the 3 new releases that I've read. But the one I'm currently reading, like I said, is First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. Might be my favorite, but so far, this one was so freaking good, you guys. And this is, the next book I read was The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. And this is like a YA romantasy. It's a YA fae romantasy, where basically like there's this huge competition by the evil fae queen, because fae, if you guys, you know, have read fae fantasy before, or if you are familiar with the lore of fae are literally totally evil creatures, and the only way that they basically live is they make bargains with humans. So that's why this book is called The Rose Bargain, where basically it's this huge competition where a bunch of human women compete to marry the Fae Prince. And that's basically all you need to know. But the shifts of multiple POVs in this book worked so well. There was like, it just was such a good balance of balancing all the different characters, like all the women that ended up surviving or staying in the competition, because it went from 24 women to 6 women literally in the first day, and then you get like those 6 women's POVs throughout the book, and it's a different voice for every single POV. So I highly suggest the audiobook as well, but this was so good. There was so much like suspense during like the competitions. They were really they were like life or death situations. So this was really well done. I really liked this. This was a 4.5 out of 5 stars for me. I actually thought this was going to be a 5-star, but I just didn't get the 5-star feeling. But honestly, this was so freaking good. I did not see what happened towards like the last 50 or so pages coming, and now I'm really excited for the second book because this is supposed to be a duology, which is perfect. Like, people like really are very satisfied with things that are like duologies, or like at the max like a trilogy. I feel like my max would be like a quartet, like An Ember in the Ashes, which I have still yet to read, and I'm dying to read that series. But I feel like anything more than 4 books, it's like, come on, like, besides Shatter Me, even though I feel like Shatter Me should have ended by the time Defy Me was over, because like I said, Imagine Me was not very good. But this was great. This was so much fun. So I really enjoyed that. And then the next book, honestly, I wasn't even planning on reading this anytime soon. But again, this was a new February release, and this was Ali Hazelwood's new release, which is Deep End. So I did end up reading this one. I did end up reading it because I jumped into the deep end. Oh my God, so funny. So I picked this up like a couple of weeks ago. So I also picked up Rose Bargain not too long ago. So these were both recently purchased books that I actually ended up reading. So go me. But I think I'm going to return this book. I just wanted to talk about it because I love like the sprayed edges, and I just wanted to show you guys. But I wanted to read this because, one, I wanted to check off another Ali Hazelwood off of her backlist, because for some reason I want to read all of her books. I don't know what it is. It's just like her books are just so easy to binge. But I didn't really feel anything towards this book. It was just a book that I read. Like, I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I definitely enjoyed this more than Bride, but definitely not more than Love Theoretically. Love Theoretically is still my favorite Ali Hazelwood that I've read so far. And that's the only book that I've rated over 4 stars. Like, all the other books that I've read from Ali Hazelwood, I've rated under 4 stars. But I'm still wanting to read all of her books because I want to see if I can find a 5-star read from her. Because, like, that's how much I'm interested in her books. And I do think she's a fun writer. So, but this, I have so much to rant about with this book. But this book just wasn't as funny as her other books were. Like, again, Love Theoretically, I was laughing throughout, like, the entire book. And I was expecting, like, that witty, fun banter. But not even that. It's, like, more so, like, the main character's, like, internal thoughts is what I really love. But honestly, a lot of the things that this was leading up to really fell flat for me. And also, I just want to briefly talk about the BDSM aspect of this book. If you guys don't want to hear about it, you can click out. I don't care. But, like, I need to speak about it because I actually have friends who are in BDSM relationships and they are married. And they tell me about, whatever they want to do. And honestly, I have no judgment towards anybody's life, anybody's sex life. If you want to do what you want to do with your sex life, you go right ahead. I don't care. But, like, honestly, this was almost kind of an insult to BDSM relationships. because there really wasn't any BDSM in this book. Like, every time it led up to a smutty scene, it was just them having regular sex. Like, the only thing that was, groundbreaking was when he finally slapped her ass. And I'm like... And then literally, like, towards the end of the book, they were like, oh my God, we're having vanilla sex and it's so wonderful because we love each other. And it's like... Again, there's nothing wrong with that. If somebody that loves BDSM and wants to have vanilla sex because they just don't want to do that every day, then whatever. It's up to you. But, like, it just felt so anticlimactic in this because, from the very get-go, the main male character was like, I'm not into that stuff. But they still wrote each other contracts telling each other what they like. But honestly, I felt like the main female character, even though I really liked Scarlett, her name is Scarlett, and the male main character's name was Lucas. And he was okay. Honestly, I liked her a lot more. But, she's like that same kind of typical, insecure, Allie Hazelwood type of female main character. But, like, I preferred Elsie's character, like I said, in Love Theoretically. I just loved her character, and I wanted to know, like, more and more and more about her insecurities. And the one thing that she had was diabetes, and it was, like, so interesting to read about, like, her struggle with diabetes. But with this, I just really struggled to connect with the two characters in this. But also, I didn't hate them like I didn't like the character. Well, I didn't hate the characters in Bride. I just, again, did not feel anything towards them. And I kind of felt the same way about this, but I did prefer this story over Bride. But it was just, again, so anticlimactic because they didn't do any of the things that they, like, teased about. They didn't do any of it. And I'm like, that almost fucking annoyed me. I'm like, there wasn't even, like, a sex scene in the pool like they have in the freaking, like, art. I mean, yes, they were making out at one point like this, but there was, like, nothing, like, that led up to it, like, and honestly, the way that the main male character started dating Scarlett kind of gave me the ick, because he basically left his ex-girlfriend, who ends up being her best friend, and he basically says he doesn't feel anything towards breaking up with her. And Scarlett is, like, questioning constantly, like, if this is okay. And, like, even though Lucas is like, you can trust me, and I really like you, and blah, blah, blah. And then meanwhile, he couldn't really be honest with her about, like, well, I don't know. It just, like, gave me the ick, because it's like, and then at that point I didn't even really care. And then the end was just so stupid with the best friend, because she kind of made her look bad, to be honest. It made her almost look like a villain. And it's like, no, like, she's the one that encouraged them to hook up because she was drunk one night and she knew that they were both into BDSM. And she's like, you know what? You two should have sex. And then Scarlett was like, is this okay? Or did she just say this in, like, a drunken blackout kind of moment where she's not going to remember this the next day? But it was just so weird, because it's like, this is your best friend. And, best friends say this shit, like, all the time, but she wasn't really her best friend then. She, like, became her best friend throughout the book. But, like, I was just, like, waiting and waiting and waiting for, like, that big sex scene that was gonna be hot, Like, you read this book because you want the BDSM, and I feel like we didn't get that. And I'm sorry if this isn't appropriate to you, but, there's other romance relationships besides vanilla sex, okay? Get over it. We're all adults here. But, like, I don't know. I just don't even want to waste my time talking about this book anymore, because it's not really worth it. But I don't regret reading it, because honestly, like, all I wanted was a super mindless book at the time. I'm like, I just don't want to read anything that requires any brain power, and this definitely did the job. So if you just want a mindless palate cleanser, this might be fun for you. Like I said, I don't regret reading it. Like, I just felt like Bride was like such a waste of time. But with this, I was just waiting and waiting and waiting for that build up to happen, and it like never came. Oh, and the contracts that they signed were so stupid. Like, I felt like it was making fun of 50 Shades of Grey, and 50 Shades of Grey is not even a good movie. But hey, at least you get the BDSM in those movies and in the books. But like, it was kind of making fun of that, but like not in a good way, because like Scarlett never made like her wants and needs like actually voiced, you know? She was like struggling so much with, does he really like me and blah blah blah, or does he think this is okay and blah. I don't know. It was just like getting annoying. Like, it's like, girl, we're like halfway into the book and you're still like questioning whether or not you can trust this guy. I don't know. Like, it was just annoying. Like, I just can't. So anyway, and I forgot the other thing I wanted to say, but honestly, I don't think it even matters at this point. And then the last new release that I just finished, like, not even 2 days ago, and I actually really liked this one, and I wasn't sure if I was going to read this one this month either, but I'm like, I just want to finish the duology, and that is Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. I actually got this early in Book of the Month, but I didn't read it until after. Ooh, what palette is that? I'm watching Debbie's palette declutter on mute because I just wanted to film this clip, and it's been like 5 years in the making of when she was actually going to do this declutter finally, and she's doing it live. Those are pretty ass palettes. I gotta ask her what palettes those are. So anyway, this is the second book in the Crimson Moth duology. So the first book was called Heartless Hunter. And if you guys know anything about me, I wasn't really a huge fan of the first book. And I know I'm in the minority, but honestly, like, there were so many parts of that book that dragged on so much for me. I'm like, we could have made this book at least 100 pages shorter. It just got so boring to me. And then the end was just so predictable. This one was so much better, you guys. Like, this was so much better paced. I was laughing at the banter between Rune and, the hell is his name? Gideon? I actually didn't even look at it. I just remembered that his name is Gideon, but it literally says it in like the first line of the synopsis on the inside. I really ended up liking their characters by the end of this book more so than the first book. Because the first book, I just felt like it was an endless sob story of all of Gideon's problems. And I'm just like, okay, this is getting boring at this point. But with this one, there was a part 1, there was a part 2, and there was a part 3. And I feel like the pacing of this one was so much better. It was so much better. Like, it was so much more well done in this one. And basically, I don't want to give too much away. I just was very impressed with the way that this one was written. Like, as soon as I thought I was going to get bored, we jumped to something else. But it wasn't, like, confusing in any way on how she tied the themes in on this one. But I also feel like not much happened in this. But at the same time, I'm like, a lot did actually happen. It was just really good. I really enjoyed this one. I'm giving this one just a solid 4 stars. I don't feel like rounding it up to like a 4.25, but like the first book, I think I gave like a 3.25. I just really was not impressed with it. But with this one, basically, they have to fight like the Rune and Gideon are still enemies in the beginning of this book. And basically, Gideon is questioning his loyalty to, you know, humans because he's in love with a witch. And he has to decide whether or not he is either going to betray everything he pretty much knows because he is a witch hunter, or if he is going to, you know, fall in love with Rune again. And that's basically what's happening. But also I felt like the gunshots and using guns in this book was almost too much. Like, literally, almost every chapter ended with he pointed the gun in my face and then he shot. And then it's like literally but it like it did work as like a cliffhanger for you to keep on wanting to read this. And also the chapters were much shorter in this book, so they were almost kind of like the length of like thriller chapters. Like some chapters in this were just like a page. But the pacing worked so well. Like some of the chapters in this book were also a page, and I didn't really mind that because at that point I just didn't really care about this book anymore. But I just was just really well done. And then also they have to, you know, fight the witches to see whether or not the witches are going to take over the humans. And it was really good. I really enjoyed this a lot. So I enjoyed it way more than I thought I was going to, because honestly, I was not excited to pick this up at all. And then I saw one person comment when I first started reading this, when I updated saying like, I'm not excited to read this, but like basically I was looking for some encouragement to read it. And one person said, I felt the same way about the first book, but trust me, this one is so much better. So I was like, sold. So I read it and I was like, you're right. You were right. So yeah, I do recommend this duology. It's not my favorite, but I'm sure like other people will like the first book way more than I did, because I, again, seem to be in the minority. But I think I'm going to give this book away because I don't need to keep this. I don't have the first one. I literally sold the first one last year. I just got this in Book of the Month because I thought I was going to read it before it came out, and then I didn't get to it until like 2 days ago when it's already been out for like over 10 days. So yeah, those were the new releases that I read in February. And again, I will check back in tomorrow when I finish First Time Caller and Beautiful Ugly. So because today's literally the last day of the month, and I should be able to finish First Time Caller in 12 hours. So yeah, that's it. I'm gonna go read now. Bye. And I'll check back in later. Okay, so hey guys. So I wanted to give you guys a recap of the 2 books I finished today on the last day of the month. I mean, technically it's 2:30 in the morning right now on March 1st, but if you guys have been following me, I mean, it's still going to say March 1st on Goodreads, but I'm still counting this book to be finished in February. That's what I do. If I'm like literally 70 or 75% into a book, and then I don't finish it until like 1 or 2 in the morning on that night, like the last night of the month, it still counts for that month's reading, because I'm not going to wait a whole ass other month or another month to talk about a book that I finished. Like, the next book I'm going to read is an ARC read. So, that's going to be the first book that I read in March. So anyway, so I just finished the Kindle read that I was reading, but I just want to talk about the audiobook that I finished earlier, because I did tell you guys I was going to finish that earlier. Sorry if there's like glare from my glasses. That's actually like really annoying me. I think that's from the Kindle actually. No, it's not. It's not the Kindle. So anyway, I finished Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. You guys, this book was so good. Finally, a good thriller this month. I am just really enjoying Alice Feeney's books, and I don't care what anybody says about her, because also my hair looks really good. I washed it last night, so it actually looks good for once. So anyway, but it was just so good. And the audiobook, amazing. I loved the audiobook. I loved the 2 narrators. It's just like, the British know how to do audiobooks. The British know how to write thrillers, okay? They know how to write good romance books. They know how to write good thrillers. They know how to write good fantasy. It's just like, most of the books that I have been enjoying lately are like either like a British vibe or like from British authors. But just, I know that Alice Feeney's like kind of controversial, but I don't care. She knows how to write a good thriller. This was so good. So basically it's about a writer that gets sent to like this remote island. And I forget where. I think it's in Scotland, because they all sound like they have like Scottish or like Welsh accents. I'm not sure exactly where. Or maybe it's somewhere in Wales. I can't remember. Basically, he's sent there because he needs to write his next novel, But it starts off where his wife has disappeared. He's been married to her for like, I think like 10 years or something. And he, you know, goes to this island, and this like woman is like, driving him to where he needs to go. And she's like, so what brings you here? And he's like, I am just staying here so I can write my book. And he's like, then I'm going to return home. And she's like, oh, no one ever leaves this place. And it's like, the way that is so true by the end of this book was so well done. And actually, this book did creep me out a couple times, but more like my jaw was just on the floor. Like I wasn't, there was like a couple parts though that it was like a little bit creepy. So like, honestly, Alice Feeney has been the only author this year, the only thriller author this year that has actually creeped me out with both books that I've read from her. So far, I really have been enjoying her writing, and actually I would like to read more books by her. But I am going to finish, the handful of thrillers that I do have, which is First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. That's going to be my next thriller on my list because I picked up the paperback, and then Stephen King's Billy Summers. And then I'm probably going to finally pick up The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. But honestly, I really don't have too many physical thrillers because I don't really buy that many thrillers. So like basically I think those are the only 3 thrillers that I own at the current moment. There might be, I also have a Claire McIntosh book. I believe it's called I See You. But besides that, that's really it. I don't think I have any other ones as far as I can see on my TBR card at the current moment. But this was so well done. Like, the audiobook, 10 out of 10, because it had sound effects, it had music, it had like intro music to some of the chapters. It was just so good. I really enjoyed it. It had like a phone ringing sound. It had like a bell chime when you walk into a store. The walkie-talkie sound. Oh, it was just so good. I really enjoyed it. And the ending gave me chills listening to it. But it ended with like one of my greatest fears as well. So it was so well done. I just really enjoy her writing. So I definitely want to read more books by her. I'm like kind of again done with Rita McFadden right now. I'd much rather read other thriller authors right now. Okay, sorry, my leg is itchy. And I gave it, I didn't even say what I rated it. I gave it a 4.25 stars. I don't know if I said what I rated Deep End earlier by Ellie Hazelwood, but I gave that a 3 stars. If I already said that, I'm sorry, but I don't remember if I said my rating for it. And Rose Bargain, I gave a 4.25 or a 4.5 because it was so good. And Rebel Witch, I gave a 4 stars, just a solid 4 stars. I didn't feel like rounding it up because I don't feel like too much towards Gideon and Rune's characters. I just felt like this book really wrapped up the duology very well, and I very much enjoyed the second book way more than the first one. And then the last book that I literally just finished like 10 minutes ago on my Kindle was First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. And I'm kind of conflicted on this book, to be honest, because I was getting the 5-star feeling with this book the first like 50 to almost 60% of this book. I was absolutely loving it. I thought it was adorable. I thought it was so well written. I thought it was so funny. It was giving me all the warm fuzzies. It was giving me just such a good vibe while reading it. I was smiling. I was laughing. I was giggling. But then like the last, after like that 60% mark, it annoyed me. And like, it felt like it was kind of dragging a little bit, and I felt like the reason why, so basically it's about this couple about the 2 main characters are Lucy and Aiden, and basically Lucy has like written off dating, like she never wants to date again because she thinks that she'll never really find love, and like she's kind of like cutting herself off from her own happiness. But I felt like with Lucy's reasoning for not wanting to date again was a lot more. I mean, it's not like Aiden didn't have reasons to date, but to not date, I mean. But at one point, it was getting annoying for me. Because there was just like so many points in the story where it was like, okay, we know they're going to be together already, and I felt like it was just dragging on to find reasons on why they weren't going to be together. And I'm like, what is the point of this? So anyway, let me actually describe what it's about. So Lucy has sworn off dating, and like her daughter, like, because she has a daughter, she's like a single mother, but also like her ex-husband is very supportive of raising her daughter because he's a gay dad, and she has like 2 gay dads. Like, he's married to like this wonderful man named Mateo, and their dynamic together was so fucking funny. They were like reminded me of like the Odd Couple, just hysterical. So like all that, I was really like loving the newfound family in this book. Well, not really found family because they're all originally family. Just don't listen to my bullshit. It's fucking late. I have to get up in like 6 hours for work. I don't even know why I'm saying this right now. I just wanted to save my thoughts when it's like fresh in my mind. I'm gonna turn off my Kindle though, because like I already showed the cover. So, but I wanted to read this book because I did enjoy Love Light Farms by B.K. Borison. It wasn't my all-time favorite romance, but out of all the romance reads that I read for Christmas, like the Christmas romances, it was my favorite one. Even though it wasn't like that great, it was still better than like The Wedding Witch and The Christmas Tree Farm, which I really did not like either of those books. But anyway, I don't even remember which other ones I read. My December Darling was good too. So basically, her daughter calls into this radio show, and it's called like the Heartstrings radio station, and Aiden is the host of this radio station, but also like barely anybody listens to them. Like they've been struggling to get listeners and exposure. So basically, Maya calls into this radio station because he's supposed to be like helping people find love or giving like love advice, of course. So she calls in and she tells Aiden that my mother like has not dated in a while, and can you help her find love, pretty much. And that becomes like the whole project of like this whole book. So she like starts talking to Aiden, and you know, everybody heard like that she was on the radio last night, and everybody's like super excited for her to go on the show. And basically like their radio show has now been getting more listeners because everybody's interested in Lucy finding love. So that's basically like what happened, and like it's a whole like Sleepless in Seattle kind of retelling. So who doesn't love Sleepless in Seattle? I love that movie. I watched it like years ago after like never seeing it, and I'm like, I finally need to see this movie, and it's so good. I love it. I feel like I need to rewatch it at some point. There's so many movies I need to watch, but I'm fucking reading all the time. Not that I don't love it, but I feel like I need to watch some movies. I feel like I just need to have a movie marathon one day where I watch like 3 movies that I need to watch. So anyway, but then you know I'm just going to be reading that whole time. So basically, throughout the book, you know, her and Aiden develop a relationship. But there's like so many times where it's like, I don't know, I don't really want to give it away, but at one point, I didn't like the way Aiden was jealous of Lucy as she like, you know, went on more dates with guys. And I really loved like the buildup of like Lucy's character, and honestly, I really did enjoy Lucy's character way more than Aiden. And if it wasn't for Lucy's character, I was really feeling like DNFing this book by like the 65-70% mark, which is crazy because I was loving the first half so much. And when I saw like Sarah Carelli's review of it, I was like, I didn't really get turned off by the point that she did, and she still gave the book 4 stars. I'm giving the book a solid 4 stars. But I was honestly thinking about giving it a 3.85, but honestly, I felt like the ending made up for like the 60 to 70% mark, because from 60% all the way up to 85%, I was getting bored. So, but I'm like, literally 70% of the book was good. So I'm like, I don't want to give it like, or like at least 75% of the book. I'm saying like maybe like 25% of the book I didn't really like. So that's not like a complete reason to round it down to 3 stars, because I still really enjoyed this book. I don't regret reading it. I'm just like conflicted on how to feel about it, because it's like, I can't believe I was enjoying it so much and I was getting that 5-star feeling. And then I was like, I just felt like it was a little bit too long for what it is. And I do agree with Sarah Carelli's review of that, saying it was too long. But honestly, I enjoyed Beautiful Ugly way more than this book, I feel like. But also, like, I don't know why people were hating on the ending of Beautiful Ugly. I feel like if you don't listen to the audiobook, you don't really get the full effect of it. And I'm not saying like, you know, everybody should listen to audiobooks if you don't listen to audiobooks. I'm just saying the audiobook was so well done. And like the whisper at the end, at the very end, was just chilling. I loved it. It was so good. So I went into Beautiful Ugly not having as high expectations, and I went into First Time Caller having very high expectations. And it's funny, like, because sometimes people are like, if you go into a book with no expectations, sometimes it can shock you on how much you actually like it. And that's how I felt. But I also felt like I knew I was going to like Beautiful Ugly, because, like I said, I feel like Alice Feeney's build-up is worth it. So far I've read 2 books by her and I've liked both of them. And so far I've read 2 books by B.K. Borison, and I feel like they've kind of disappointed me at points in the book. And I kind of felt the same way about Love Light Farms, is that I loved like the first like 50 to 60% of it. And then towards like, you know, the last like 40 or 50 pages, it annoyed me the way that it ended. So I thought that this book would redeem her for me, but it's not like I'm going to swear her off. I still really enjoy her writing. It's just like, again, I felt like this book could have ended at like 360 pages and it would have been fine. I felt like it was like 420 pages was kind of too long for this book. Because also I felt like around the 65-70% mark, I'm like, okay, what's gonna go wrong now? Because it's like Aiden's jealousy like pissed me off, and he was being mean to her at one point, and I didn't like that. Like, that's what gave me the ick. It wasn't like Aiden struggling with his confidence, because honestly he had a reason to. It was more so like just the way he was treating Lucy at that point that fucking annoyed me. So take that with what you will. That's all I'm going to say. That's basically the gist of the book. I don't want to like, you know, rant and rave about it for too long. That's where I'm going to leave it, because I feel like we'll be here forever if I keep on talking about it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I ended up reading, I can't believe how many books I ended up reading this month. It's kind of insane. I read more books this month than I did in January. But also in January, I found a 6-star read. And I read some incredible books in January. But like I said, February overall, I enjoyed way more of the books that I read this month than I did in January. And I think that's why I read so much this month. I read 21 books this month. And like I said, it's actually including 3 novellas, because I also read The Fall Risk. I forgot to include that. So if we didn't read Destroy Me, Fracture Me, or The Fall Risk, we would have read 19 books still, but that's 2 audiobooks. So again, I still finished 17 books this month. So that's usually my average, and then 2 audiobooks and 3 novellas. Wait, is that right? I actually didn't even count up how many physical books I read. So let me just count that really quick. So I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I read 13 physical books this month, but actually I think I didn't keep She's Not Sorry. So that's 12 that are still in my library. And I'm also not keeping in Deep End, so that would be 11. And I'm also not keeping Rebel Witch. Wait, that would be 11 then. So that it would still be 11 physical books. Because I'm decluttering 2 of them and returning. Well, I did return one of them, and I'm going to return Deep End because I'm not keeping that. And then I read Beartown on my Kindle. The Fall Risk, obviously, on my Kindle. Shatter Me, I read mostly on my Kindle. Even though I own the physical book, it is available on Kindle Unlimited. I read Promise Me Sunshine on my Kindle, but that's also because it's an ARC read. I wasn't going to have the physical copy of that because it's not out yet. And then I read First Time Caller on my Kindle. So I read 5 Kindle reads, 13 physical books. That's 18. And then 2 audiobooks was 20. What am I forgetting? Wait, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I read 7 Kindle reads. I think that's what I forgot. And then 13 physical books. How does that make sense? And then 2 audiobooks. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, 21 books. I don't know why I can't figure out the math right now. We read 21 books. That's all that matters, okay? So yeah, please like and subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram at cbw819 and check out my Poshmark at the same handle. Honestly, I have not updated my Poshmark in so long. I don't even know why I say that at this point because there's no point, to be honest. And let me know if you guys have read any of these books or if you're interested in reading any of them. Let me know. I know nobody ever does because who watches my videos, to be honest. So it's mostly just me talking to myself because where else am I going to talk about books besides YouTube and Goodreads? So yeah, I still have not left my Goodreads in my link below because, and also I lost one of some of the footage of a reading vlog that I filmed last month for January's reads, and I still haven't posted it. So I might post it later this month. But I also regret not filming my February new releases vlog because I could have done that because I ended up just reading new releases the last week of February. Even though I said I wasn't going to do that. And then I ended up reading The Rosebark and Deep End, Rebel Witch, and First Time Caller, which were all new February releases. So I could have just titled it Reading New February Releases for a week. But I didn't vlog it, so you get my thoughts here. So yeah, I think my favorite book this month was Beartown, and my least favorite book still was She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica. But Beartown was still my standout read this month, and it's so funny because it was my first book that I read this month, and I absolutely loved that book so much. And then Promise Me Sunshine was definitely a standout read this month as well. But it's already going to count for March because technically I would be reading that in March if I didn't get the ARC. I'm sure we'll read a book that beats it, but I'm going to include it for February. So those were definitely my 2 favorite books. And Heavenly Bodies. I loved Heavenly Bodies too. And I'm thinking about upping that to a 5-star. So those were my top 3 favorite books this month. And the entire Shatter Me series was so much fun, but I just wanted to say my standout reads. And my least favorite was She's Not Sorry and Deep End. Those 2 were not very good. So yeah, I need to start doing that at the end where I recap what my favorite books were and what my least favorite books were. So that's what I'm going to do now. So bye. Keep reading. Bye.